Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Elysium. I want to take a break from the Iceberg series for a bit to tell you a story that has been in circulation for over half a millennium, and one that we have no actual reason to believe isn't true. In Christianity, specifically Catholicism, there is a man named St. Thomas Aquinas. He is considered one of, if not the greatest, theologian in all of Christianity, having written the monumental Summa Theologia, an immense series of volumes covering almost every theological question known to man, as well as commanding a mind-boggling understanding of philosophy, logic, and reasoning. But as brilliant as Thomas Aquinas was, he had to learn all that from somebody. That someone was Saint Albertus Magnus, a 13th century bishop, although his talents were renowned in the fields of philosophy, history, and all kinds of sciences. He was a towering intellect of the Middle Ages, deeply engaged with Aristotle's works, natural philosophy, alchemy, and theology. He was later declared a saint and a doctor of the church, or one who has contributed a significant amount of writings to the development of the religion. Albertus Magnus was Thomas's teacher, the intellect from which his knowledge stemmed. But how did Albertus Magnus learn all his knowledge? Well, among other things, he had a sort of oracle. According to a legend yet to be convincingly disproven, he spent over 30 years of his life constructing a brass automaton-like figure. This head of bronze was built using a combination of metals chosen under specific astrological influences, as well as consulting ancient Greco-Roman texts on natural science, philosophy, and mathematics. The result was a mechanical figure capable of human-like speech, reasoning, and answering any question put to it with perfect accuracy. It could serve as an infallible oracle or advisor. Using steam and compressed air devices, it was said to be able to even speak. It could not comment on things it didn't previously know about, it was not sentient, but had an ability to reason through topics explained to it and built up a sort of repository of knowledge for future reference. Albertus's talking head, as it were, was positioned in his classroom, and was often consulted in lectures. There were even times when this head, which would sit and hear all the lectures, would even challenge and debate Albertus Magnus on topics, and it is said was even proven right sometimes. And who was in these lectures? None other than Thomas Aquinas. However, he wasn't such a fan of the creation of his teacher. Convinced that there was some sort of pagan influence, one day Thomas took a club and just smashed the thing to pieces. When Albertus returned and saw the wreckage, he reportedly lamented the loss of his life's work, saying something to the effect that Thomas had destroyed something that had taken 30 years of his life to build. Embarrassed, Thomas asked if he could simply help him build a new one. According to the account, Albertus said that due to the specific celestial influences that enabled him to set the thing in motion, it would be another, 30,000 years, not too long, before he could build another one. Albertus Magnus was not the only theologian or scientist of his time or later to create such a thing. It is reported that Roger Bacon, the poet Virgil, and even Pope Sylvester II had similar devices. I cannot help but read these stories and be reminded, actually, of our modern-day systems of artificial intelligence. And further, it makes me wonder if humanity has seen forms of AI in the past. Before I explain why I wonder such a thing, however, we need to take a brief divergence into the world of Aristotelian philosophy. In this field, there exists a fundamental concept known as first principles. Simply speaking, first principles refers to the most basic, fundamental truths or assumptions from which all other knowledge, arguments, or solutions about a thing can be derived or built. Instead of relying on analogies, traditions, or popular opinions, or what everyone knows, for lack of a better word, first principles thinking means breaking a problem, idea, or subject down to its most irreducible, self-evident components, the building blocks that cannot be broken down further, and then reasoning upward from there. The goal is to arrive at a solution or truth by starting from what is certain or most fundamental. An example of this would be in geometry. In Euclid's Elements, the work that essentially invented geometry as we know it, Euclid starts with a small set of axioms, first principles like a straight line can be drawn between any 2 points, and derives all of geometry from them. With a basic understanding of first principles, we can now ask, was the talking head of Albertus Magnus an old world version of what we would now call AI, but derived from different first principles? That is to say, its function is essentially the same, but the cornerstone truths its creation is built upon are different thus necessitating a completely different form and apparatus, let us consider the possible first principles of modern-day AI. I think it's fair to say AI emerges from a layered foundation of philosophical ideas, mathematical truths, computational principles, and empirical observations about intelligence, learning, and data. We break complex systems down to these fundamentals and rebuild upward, exactly the first principles approach. Some truths we could lay out as valid are the Church-Turing thesis. That is to say, any effective procedure or algorithm can be carried out by a mechanical device. Without this, there is no theoretical basis for a machine to perform any cognitive task. It reduces intelligence to deterministic or probabilistic processes that can be automated. Another one could be Boolean algebra and formal logic. We see AI use this by working with probability and deductive reasoning. And lastly, learning from experience or data. Systems can improve performance through exposure to examples rather than being hand-programmed for every case. These are some big ones that jump out at me. There are obviously some foundations in the materials used, such as computer chips, the transistor, etc. Returning to the talking head story, could it just have been built from different first principles? To my reasoning, a bronze talking head would derive possibly from an entirely different set of first principles rooted in medieval natural philosophy, astrology, alchemy, natural science, etc. It was widely believed in both the medieval and Greco-Roman world that the stars and planets emit virtues or influences that affect terrestrial matter in predictable, mathematically describable ways. Proper alignment of materials, timing, and construction channels these influences to animate or empower the object. Thomas Aquinas, remember, a Catholic theologian and saint, even discusses this idea as being true. This would explain why Albertus Magnus said it would take another 30,000 years before the celestial alignment would be right to build another one. There's also the monumental influence of Aristotelian and even more so Platonic thought. According to Platonism, giving something the form of a head, the shape, rudimentary forms of organs or inward parts, allows it to receive a principle of motion or reason. Speech and answering questions arise from the object's participation in universal intellect or through infused agency. Some versions blend this with mechanical elements such as the mechanisms, vapors, acoustics, what have you, but subordinate them to higher causes. There are also other limitations, like the materials being used, the power source, etc. I don't have a concrete answer to this, but again, these talking heads legends were widespread across the medieval era and are attested to not ignorant magicians, but men of philosophy and knowledge. With the disconnect between now and the old world being as great as it is worth considering the possibility that our forebears, with their knowledge of first principles, could have derived a form of artificial intelligence, albeit rudimentary, stemming from entirely different foundations and processes. The end result is something similar to our version of AI, yet hard to comprehend since we do not think within the Platonic medieval framework and haven't for centuries. Give it some thought. The belief that the world was unable to reason through reality because of a lack of scientific discovery is shaky. Let me know what you think about this. Could these talking heads just be fanciful legend? Or is it something real, yet forgotten by us moderns? And that's all I have today. Thank you very much for watching. This was just a short one to put out. Make sure to check out my Biblical Pseudohistory Iceberg series. We will be resuming that very soon. Leave a like and subscribe if the spirit so moves you. This has been Esoteric Elysium. God bless.